History held its breath as two empires collided under the scorching sun of ancient Egypt. A Roman general, his will as unyielding as the legions he commanded, believed conquest was his destiny. But in the heart of Nubia, he would meet his match, a queen whose spirit was as fierce and untamed as the desert itself. Their collision ignited a forbidden passion, a secret liaison that threatened to shatter two worlds and demand an impossible choice between duty and an undeniable desire. Will their love forge a new era or consume everything in its path? Have you ever loved someone you couldn't have? Before we delve into this sweeping saga, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you joining us from? And what is it about the timeless allure of period romances that truly captures your heart? The amber glow of oil lamps danced across the polished marble columns of the Roman headquarters in Sienne, casting long shadows that seemed to reach toward the darkening Nile beyond. General Gaius Petronius stood motionless before an ebony table, his weathered hands spread flat against the detailed maps of Egypt's southern frontier. The year was 24 before the birth of Christ, and the weight of empire pressed heavily upon his broad shoulders. At 42, Gaius possessed the bearing of a man who had conquered Gaul beside Caesar and stood witness to the fall of Mark Antony. His steel-grey eyes, sharp as a falcon's, traced the serpentine course of the great river as it wound its way toward the mysterious lands of Nubia. The flickering light caught the silver threading through his dark hair, evidence of 2 decades spent in service to Rome's relentless expansion. "Centurion Flavius," he called without lifting his gaze from the maps, his voice carrying the authority of countless battlefields. "What word from our scouts?" Marcus Flavius stepped forward from the circle of officers, his scarred face grave beneath the bronze gleam of his helmet's transverse crest. At 35, he had served under Gaius for 8 years, earning his commander's trust through unwavering loyalty and tactical brilliance. "The reports remain unchanged, General. The southern routes grow more perilous with each passing day." The heavy wooden doors of the headquarters burst open, admitting a dust-covered messenger whose exhausted horse could be heard snorting in the courtyard beyond. The young soldier's face was flushed with the urgency of his mission as he approached with a sealed scroll bearing the imperial eagle. "Orders from Augustus Caesar," the messenger announced, his voice hoarse from the long ride from Alexandria. Gaius accepted the scroll with steady hands, though something in the messenger's expression made his pulse quicken. The crimson wax seal bore the personal mark of the emperor himself. As he broke it open, the parchment crackled in the sudden silence that had fallen over the assembled officers. His eyes moved across the elegant Latin script, and with each word, his jaw tightened. When he finally looked up, his expression had transformed from curiosity to grim determination. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade, "we march south at dawn. 2 full legions, plus auxiliaries, 8,000 men to bring the final jewel of Africa under Roman rule." Marcus Flavius shifted uncomfortably, his practical mind already calculating the challenges ahead. "General, if I may speak freely, the desert campaigns are unlike anything we've faced in Gaul or Germania. The Nubian archers are legendary for their accuracy and their knowledge of the terrain." "Are you questioning the wisdom of Caesar Augustus?" Gaius interrupted, though his tone held no real rebuke. He valued Marcus's counsel too highly for that. "Never, sir. But intelligence suggests that Queen Amanirenas is more dangerous than 10 legions. The reports speak of a woman who commands not through birthright alone, but through genuine tactical brilliance." Gaius waved a dismissive hand, though privately he felt a flicker of unease. "Exaggeration, Marcus. How formidable can any barbarian queen truly be against the might of Rome?" The word barbarian felt strange on his tongue, somehow inadequate for describing the reports he had read. Still, duty demanded confidence, and confidence required certainty. 3 days later, the diplomatic mission Gaius had dispatched to the Nubian capital returned in a manner that would haunt his dreams for years to come. The surviving messenger stumbled into camp at sunset, his eyes wild with terror, leading a pack mule bearing a cargo that made even veteran legionnaires step back in horror. 5 golden bowls, each crafted with exquisite artistry, contained the severed heads of the Roman emissaries. The metalwork was extraordinary, featuring intricate patterns that spoke of a sophisticated civilization far removed from Roman preconceptions of primitive African tribes. Marcus Flavius lifted one of the bowls with reverent care, studying the inscriptions that curved around its rim like flowing water. "General, look at this craftsmanship. The gold is purer than anything in our treasury, and these symbols—" He traced the elegant Meroitic script with one finger. "This isn't the work of savages." The camp's Egyptian interpreter, an elderly scholar named Kiti, examined the inscriptions with growing pale. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. "The message is clear, General. Rome's eagles will feed the desert vultures. But there's more. The script itself. It's written by someone educated in multiple languages, Greek, Egyptian, and Meroitic. This queen, she's no mere tribal leader." That night, as Gaius walked the perimeter of the camp, he found himself staring south toward the star-filled horizon. Somewhere beyond those distant dunes lay Meroë, the golden city of the Nubians, and the woman who had just declared war on Rome in the most dramatic fashion imaginable. For the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine uncertainty about the outcome of a campaign. The march south began at dawn, a magnificent display of Roman military precision. 8,000 men moved in perfect formation, their armor catching the early sunlight like scales on some great metal serpent. The crimson standards snapped in the desert breeze, bearing the golden eagles that had conquered half the known world. Gaius rode at the head of the column, his white stallion stepping proudly across the ancient stones of Elephantine Island. Behind him stretched the might of Rome, the 1st and 2nd Egyptian legions, Syrian archers, Germanic cavalry, and a full complement of engineers and siege specialists. Yet as they advanced deeper into Nubian territory, disturbing signs began to accumulate like storm clouds on the horizon. Villages stood empty, their inhabitants vanished as if swallowed by the desert itself. Wells had been poisoned or filled with sand. Livestock had been driven away, leaving no sustenance for the advancing army. "It's too organized," Marcus observed, as they surveyed yet another abandoned settlement. "This isn't panic, it's strategy." Gaius nodded grimly, his respect for his unseen opponent growing with each mile. "She's forcing us to extend our supply lines while denying us local resources." "Clever!" Their Egyptian guides began deserting in increasing numbers, slipping away in the night like shadows. Those who remained spoke in hushed whispers of Amanirenas the lioness, their voices carrying a mixture of fear and awe that made the Roman soldiers uneasy. On the 5th day of the march, an ancient priest approached their camp as the sun was setting. He was bent with age, his white hair gleaming like silver in the fading light, but his eyes burned with the intensity of prophecy. "General of Rome," he called in accented but clear Latin, "I bring you words from the old gods, from the time when the Nile was young." Gaius dismounted and approached the old man, something in his manner commanding respect, despite his humble appearance. "Speak, old father." The priest's voice carried across the silent camp like wind through temple columns. "When eagles learn to hunt with lions, the Nile will run golden for 1,000 years. But beware, son of Rome, for the lioness you seek is not what she appears to be." Before Gaius could respond, the old man melted back into the gathering darkness, leaving only the echo of his words and the unsettling feeling that forces greater than military strategy were at work in this ancient land. The first real contact with Nubian forces came on the 7th day, when scouts reported movement on the distant ridges. Through his field glass, Gaius could make out figures that appeared and disappeared like mirages, always just beyond the range of his archers. "They're studying us," Marcus observed, lowering his own glass. learning our formations, our habits, our weaknesses. That night the attacks began. Swift, silent raids on the supply train that left guards dead and provisions destroyed. The attackers struck like ghosts, appearing from nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. No prisoners were taken, no bodies left behind, only the evidence of their deadly efficiency. On the morning of the 8th day, Gaius made a decision that would later seem prophetic. A Roman patrol had discovered a wounded Nubian scout, barely alive and delirious with fever. Standard protocol demanded immediate interrogation, followed by execution. Instead, Gaius found himself ordering the camp physician to treat the man's wounds. "Sir?" Marcus questioned, his eyebrows raised in surprise. "He's a soldier, Marcus, like us. He deserves a warrior's honor, not a torturer's attention." As the Nubian recovered under Roman care, Gaius found himself studying the man's features, noting the intelligence in his dark eyes and the dignity with which he bore his captivity. When the scout was well enough to travel, Gaius personally escorted him to the edge of camp and set him free. "Tell your queen," he said in the few words of Nubian he had learned, "that Romans can show mercy as well as strength." Marcus watched this exchange with growing fascination. In all their years together, he had never seen his general show such consideration for an enemy. Something was changing in Gaius Petronius, though neither man could yet understand what it meant. The discovery that would end the chapter came at sunset on the 10th day of the march. A patrol that had been missing for 2 days was found in a small oasis, their situation so bizarre that the reporting centurion could barely speak coherently. Gaius and Marcus rode out immediately to investigate, their horses' hooves drumming against the hard-packed sand. What they found defied all military experience and sent a chill through even these veteran warriors. 12 Roman soldiers sat buried to their necks in the sand, still alive but driven mad by exposure to the merciless sun. Their eyes were wild, their voices broken from screaming, and their minds shattered by an ordeal that had lasted 2 full days. But it was the message carved in perfect Latin letters in the sand beside them that made Gaius's blood run cold. "Turn back or join them." As the sun set behind the distant pyramids of Meroë, painting the sky the color of blood, Gaius Petronius realized that he was no longer hunting prey. Somewhere in the gathering darkness, a lioness was stalking him, and for the first time in his illustrious career, the hunter had become the hunted. The game had begun, and the stakes were nothing less than the future of 2 empires. Dawn broke like molten copper over the towering sandstone cliffs of Dakka Gorge, painting the ancient walls in shades of amber and gold that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the desert itself. General Gaius Petronius stood at the edge of the narrow canyon, his weathered hands gripping the leather reins of his white stallion as he studied the terrain that would either crown his career with glory or write his name in the annals of Roman defeat. The gorge stretched before them, like the throat of some primordial beast, its walls rising 300 feet on either side, carved by millennia of wind and water into fantastic shapes that resembled the forgotten gods of Egypt. The passage was barely wide enough for 4 men to march abreast, a natural bottleneck that any competent military mind would recognize as a trap waiting to be sprung. "General!" Marcus Flavius approached on foot, his scarred face etched with concern beneath the bronze gleam of his centurion's helmet. "The scouts report Nubian forces in full retreat toward Meroë. They appear to be fleeing in complete disarray." Gaius lowered his field glass, a frown creasing his brow as he processed this unexpected development. After 10 days of cat-and-mouse games across the desert, the sudden collapse of Nubian resistance seemed almost too convenient to believe. Yet the evidence was there. Abandoned camps with fires still smoldering, supply wagons overturned in apparent haste, and the unmistakable signs of an army in panicked flight. "What's your assessment, Marcus?" Gaius asked, though something in his centurion's expression already suggested skepticism. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his practical mind warring with military protocol. Sir, with respect, it feels wrong. This queen has shown nothing but tactical brilliance for the past 10 days. Why would she suddenly abandon such advantageous terrain? The question hung in the desert air like incense in a temple, heavy with implications that neither man wanted to voice. Around them, the legions waited in perfect formation, 8,000 men whose lives depended on the decision their general would make in the next few moments. Gaius felt the weight of their expectation, the burden of Roman pride that demanded pursuit of a fleeing enemy. To hesitate now would be to show weakness, to question the superiority that had carried Rome's eagles to the ends of the earth. Yet something in the stillness of the gorge whispered warnings that his rational mind struggled to ignore. "We pursue," he declared finally, his voice carrying across the assembled officers with the authority of Caesar himself. "Rome does not allow her enemies to escape when victory is within our grasp." As the order rippled through the ranks, Gaius caught sight of something that made his breath catch in his throat. High on the eastern cliff, silhouetted against the rising sun like a figure from legend, stood a solitary woman. Even at this distance, her bearing spoke of royalty, of power held with casual grace. For a heartbeat that seemed to stretch into eternity, she remained motionless, allowing herself to be seen before melting back into the shadows as if she had never been there at all. "Did you see her?" Gaius whispered, his voice barely audible above the clatter of armor and weapons. Marcus followed his gaze to the empty cliff face. "See who, General?" But the apparition had vanished, leaving only the growing certainty that they were walking into the jaws of a carefully prepared trap. Still, the die was cast, and Roman honor demanded they see it through to whatever end awaited them in the depths of Dakka Gorge. The advance began with the measured precision that had conquered half the world. The first legion took point, their crimson standards snapping in the desert breeze as they filed into the narrow passage. Behind them came the second legion, followed by the auxiliary cavalry and the baggage train, a serpent of bronze and steel winding its way into the throat of the canyon. As they progressed deeper into the gorge, the abandoned Nubian camps told a story that grew more suspicious with each discovery. The fires were indeed still warm, but they had been carefully banked to maintain their heat. Supply caches contained provisions that seemed deliberately scattered, and here and there, gold coins lay glinting in the sand like breadcrumbs in a children's tale. Marcus dismounted to examine one of the coins, his experienced eye taking in details that made his pulse quicken. "General, this gold, it's purer than anything in our treasury. The craftsmanship is extraordinary." He held up the coin, its surface bearing the image of a woman's profile surrounded by hieroglyphs of stunning complexity. "This isn't the currency of barbarians." Gaius accepted the coin, feeling its substantial weight in his palm. The woman's face was rendered with artistic skill that rivaled the finest Roman mints, her features noble and intelligent, her eyes seeming to hold secrets that spoke of ancient wisdom. Despite himself, he found his thumb tracing the elegant curve of her cheek, wondering if this was the face of the queen who had orchestrated such elaborate psychological warfare. The sun climbed higher as they penetrated deeper into the gorge, its rays creating a furnace of reflected heat from the canyon walls. The heavy Roman armor, so effective on the battlefields of Gaul and Germania, became a burden in the stifling air. Sweat poured down faces already reddened by exertion, and the rhythmic clank of metal on metal began to sound like the tolling of funeral bells. It was precisely at midday, when the sun stood directly overhead and cast no shadows to provide relief, that the trap was finally sprung. The first sign was a sound like thunder rolling across the desert, a deep rumbling that seemed to emanate from the very stones beneath their feet. Then, as if conjured by sorcery, figures appeared along the cliff faces, emerging from hidden positions carved into the living rock with such skill that they had been invisible until the moment of revelation. Nubian archers, their dark skin gleaming with oil and sweat, drew back bowstrings with the fluid grace of dancers. Their bows were works of art in themselves, crafted from horn and sinew with a recurved design that spoke of centuries of refinement. When they released their arrows, the sound was like the whisper of death itself. The first volley struck with devastating precision. Arrows found the gaps in Roman armor with surgical accuracy, dropping seasoned legionnaires where they stood. The range was impossible by Roman standards, nearly 200 yards from cliff to canyon floor, yet the Nubian shafts struck their targets with the force of ballista bolts. "Shields up!" Gaius roared, his voice echoing off the canyon walls as chaos erupted around him. "Form testudo!" But even as his men struggled to implement the turtle formation that had served Rome so well in conventional warfare, a new horror announced itself with a trumpeting that shook dust from the ancient stones. From concealed positions at both ends of the gorge, war elephants emerged like living mountains, their massive forms adorned with bronze armor that caught the sunlight like mirrors. The beasts charged with earth-shaking force, their tusks gleaming like ivory spears as they bore down on the trapped Romans. Behind them came Nubian infantry, their bronze-tipped spears glinting as they advanced with disciplined precision that would have done credit to any Roman legion. Gaius found himself in the center of a maelstrom that defied all his military experience. The confined space of the gorge, which should have favored defensive formations, had been turned against them with diabolical cleverness. Roman discipline, the foundation of their military supremacy, crumbled under tactics so innovative that they seemed to rewrite the very rules of warfare. "Stay together," Marcus Flavius shouted, his sword already bloodied as he fought to maintain some semblance of order among his men. "Don't let them separate us." But separation was inevitable in the chaos of the ambush. The war elephants had shattered the Roman formations like pottery, scattering men across the canyon floor where Nubian archers could pick them off at leisure. The heat, the confined space, and the weight of their armor combined to create a nightmare of exhaustion and desperation. Through the madness, Gaius caught glimpses of individual acts of courage that would have been worthy of epic poetry under different circumstances. He saw a young legionnaire stand his ground against a charging elephant, his palum striking true, even as the beast's tusks found his heart. He witnessed Marcus Flavius drag a wounded soldier to safety, taking an arrow in his shoulder for his compassion. Most remarkably, he observed moments of honor that transcended the boundaries of nationality. When a Roman soldier fell wounded, Nubian warriors would often pause to offer water before moving on. When a Nubian archer was struck down by a Roman javelin, nearby legionnaires would step aside to allow his comrades to retrieve the body. This was not the savage butchery that Roman propaganda had prepared him for. This was warfare, conducted with a nobility that spoke of ancient codes of honor, of civilizations that understood the difference between necessary killing and mindless slaughter. The end came with shocking suddenness. Gaius felt his stallion stumble beneath him, a Nubian arrow protruding from the noble beast's neck. As the horse collapsed, its weight pinned his leg to the ground, trapping him in the midst of the battlefield like a sacrifice on an altar. Nubian warriors closed in around him, their bronze-tipped spears forming a circle of gleaming death. Gaius drew his gladius with his free hand, prepared to sell his life dearly in the tradition of Roman generals who refused to accept defeat. His grey eyes blazed with defiance as he waited for the killing blow. Instead, a voice spoke in Latin so pure and cultured that it might have graced the Senate floor in Rome itself. General Gaius Petronius. The warriors parted like a curtain, revealing a figure that struck Gaius speechless with its unexpected majesty. Queen Amanirenas stood before him, tall and regal, her presence commanding the battlefield with an authority that needed no crown or scepter to announce itself. Her skin was the color of burnished bronze, her features noble and intelligent, her dark eyes holding depths that spoke of wisdom earned through trials that would have broken lesser souls. She wore armor of leather and bronze that had been crafted with artistic skill, its surface decorated with symbols that seemed to tell the story of her people's ancient glory. A short sword hung at her side, its hilt worn smooth by use, while a bow of horn and sinew rested across her shoulder with the casual ease of long familiarity. But it was her eyes that captured Gaius completely, eyes that held no hatred despite the carnage around them, no triumph despite her overwhelming victory. Instead, they showed something far more dangerous: respect for a worthy opponent and the intelligence to recognize courage even in defeat. "Rome has sent me a gift," she continued, her voice carrying easily across the sudden stillness that had fallen over the battlefield. Her Latin was flawless, spoken with an accent that suggested education in the finest schools of Alexandria or Athens. Gaius struggled to free himself from beneath his fallen horse, his pride demanding that he face this moment standing upright. To his surprise, Amanirenas gestured to her warriors, who immediately moved to lift the dead stallion and help him to his feet. The gesture was so unexpected, so contrary to everything he had been taught about barbarian savagery, that he found himself speechless. "You fought with honor," she said simply, her eyes meeting his without flinching. "Your men showed courage worthy of the legends told about Roman valor. Such bravery deserves respect, not mockery." Around them, the aftermath of the battle painted a picture of devastating Nubian victory. Half the Roman force lay dead or wounded, while the survivors were being efficiently rounded up by warriors who showed remarkable restraint in their treatment of prisoners. The other half had fled northward in panic, carrying news of the disaster back toward Egypt. Gaius felt the weight of defeat settling on his shoulders like a funeral shroud. Yet something in the Queen's manner prevented the crushing despair he had expected. This was not the gloating of a savage over fallen enemies, but the acknowledgement of one professional soldier to another. "Why?" he asked, his voice hoarse from shouting orders in the chaos of battle. "Why spare me?" Amanirenas smiled, and the expression transformed her face from merely beautiful to absolutely radiant. "Because, General Petronius, I have a feeling that our story is just beginning." As Nubian warriors bound his hands with silk cords that spoke of consideration rather than cruelty, Gaius found himself studying the woman who had just shattered his army with such devastating efficiency. She was not what Rome's reports had described. She was not what his own prejudices had prepared him to encounter. She was far more dangerous and far more civilized than anything his Roman mind had been capable of imagining. General Gaius Petronius expected a barbaric encampment, perhaps a walled village clinging to a riverbank. Instead, as he was led blindfolded from the battlefield, and then, after days of travel, permitted to open his eyes, Meroë erupted before him, a mirage made real under the relentless Nubian sun. Gleaming pyramids, smaller yet more numerous than Egypt's, pierced the sapphire sky, their golden capstones catching the light like scattered jewels. Sophisticated temples, carved from red sandstone, boasted intricate reliefs of gods and kings, their artistry rivaling anything he had seen in Rome or Athens. Wide, bustling avenues teemed with people of every hue, speaking a symphony of languages: Arabic, Ethiopian, even distant hints of Persian and Hindi from merchants who had traveled the Red Sea routes. The markets hummed with exotic energy. Caravans laden with ivory, ebony, and spices from the south mingled with traders hawking silks from distant China and fragrant incense from Arabia. The air was thick with the scent of myrrh and cinnamon, an intoxicating perfume that spoke of wealth and far-reaching influence. This was no primitive settlement. It was a vibrant, ancient capital, a powerful civilization that had thrived, unseen by Rome, for millennia. Gaius felt a profound intellectual tremor, a shift in his very understanding of the world. All that Rome dismissed as barbarian was in fact a complex tapestry of culture, knowledge, and power. He was not thrown into a dungeon. Instead, his new quarters within the royal palace were a testament to the Nubian queen's refined cruelty, or perhaps her unexpected respect. Silk hangings in deep blues and golds draped the walls, catching the light from arched windows that overlooked lush, terraced gardens. A private bath, fed by cool, clear water, promised solace from the desert heat. But it was the adjoining room that truly astounded him. A private library, its shelves laden with scrolls and codices. He found familiar Greek and Latin texts, but also countless others in Egyptian hieroglyphs and the elegant cursive script of Meroë, a language utterly new to him. Among them, to his astonishment, were complete works of Sappho and philosophical treatises by thinkers whose names were unknown in Rome, texts long thought lost to the world. It was a gilded prison indeed, but one designed to pique the mind, not merely confine the body. The irony was not lost on him. He was a captive, yet he felt more intellectually stimulated than he had in years. Every day, the queen summoned him to her private study, a chamber perched high in the palace, offering sweeping views of the Nile's serpentine path. These were not interrogations in the Roman style, with threats and torture. Instead, they began as polite inquiries about Roman military plans, tactics and legions, but soon their conversations evolved into intellectual duels, sharp and exhilarating. Amanirenas, her eyes bright with curiosity, absorbed every detail he offered, her questions precise, her strategic mind clearly at work. She was a quick study, analyzing Roman formations with a keenness that matched his own. In turn, Gaius found himself captivated by her descriptions of Nubian military innovations, their unmatched archers, their use of elephants in battle, and their deep knowledge of desert warfare. She spoke of her people's advanced metallurgy, producing gold purer than any in Rome, and their medicinal knowledge, which seemed to heal wounds faster than any Roman physician could. Slowly, imperceptibly, a connection began to form between them, built not on common ground, but on mutual admiration for each other's intellect and strategic prowess. He found himself explaining complex Roman siege techniques, drawing diagrams in the sand on the floor, while she, in turn, illuminated the intricacies of Meroitic political structure. Their eyes would meet across the polished ebony table, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, a recognition of something kindred in their spirits, something that transcended the chasm of their warring empires. It was in these shared moments of intellectual sparring that the first fragile threads of trust began to weave themselves. They were still enemies, a queen and her captive, but the lines blurred with each shared thought, each moment of unburdened understanding. The air between them, once thick with tension, now hummed with a different kind of energy, a contained power that crackled just beneath the surface of their formal exchanges. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert sky in hues of fiery orange and soft violet, Amanirenas invited him to walk with her in the palace gardens. The air was heavy with the scent of jasmine and night-blooming cereus, a sensual tapestry of fragrances. Exotic flowers, their petals unfurling in the twilight, glowed faintly in the fading light. As they strolled along winding paths, the sounds of the palace faded, replaced by the gentle murmur of fountains and the distant hum of the city. Amanirenas, usually so composed, her bearing regal even in the midst of battle, let a sigh escape her lips. "Sometimes," she began, her voice soft, almost a whisper, "the weight of the crown feels heavier than any armor. To rule alone, to make decisions that affect every soul in your kingdom, with no one truly to share the burden." Her voice trailed off, a rare glimpse into the isolation that accompanied her power. Gaius, surprisingly, found himself echoing her sentiment. It is the same, even for a Roman general. The loneliness of command, the decisions that lead men to their deaths. The personal cost of empire is far greater than any map can show. He looked at her, his gaze holding hers in the dimming light. A shared understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the heavy burden they both carried, albeit on opposing sides. For a fleeting moment the queen and the captive ceased to exist, replaced by two souls weighed down by the immense responsibilities of leadership. As they neared a small, secluded pond, Amanirenas stumbled slightly on a loose stone. Without thinking, Gaius reached out, his hand instinctively catching her arm to steady her. His fingers brushed against the soft linen of her sleeve, a spark of unexpected warmth passing between their skin. Her dark eyes, usually so impassive, widened almost imperceptibly as they met his. For a heart-stopping second, time seemed to halt. The world outside, the war, the empires faded away. There was only the warmth of his touch, the sudden fierce awareness of her proximity, and the unspoken realization that they were crossing a dangerous line. His hand lingered for a breath too long, a silent testament to the electric current that now arced between them, a silent question, a silent answer. Both knew, with a certainty that thrilled and terrified them, that they were straying onto forbidden ground. Yet neither could bring themselves to retreat. The political currents within Meroë, however, would not allow such intimate moments to remain undisturbed. Gaius's presence, though sanctioned by the queen, stirred unease among the Nubian court. His cousin, Caliut, a man of fierce loyalty and sharp political acumen, voiced his concerns with growing vehemence. He argued for Gaius's immediate execution, not from personal malice or naked ambition, but from a deeply rooted fear that Amanirenas was being subtly manipulated by her Roman captive. Caliut's motivation, Amanirenas knew, stemmed from a sacred promise he had made to his dying uncle, the former king. He had sworn to protect her, his beloved cousin, and her throne from all threats, foreign or domestic. In his eyes, Gaius was the most insidious threat of all, a poison seeping into the heart of their kingdom. Even Amanirenas' young daughter, Princess Amanitore, added a new layer of tension. The adolescent girl, at just 14, found herself drawn to the exotic Roman general. His tales of distant lands, his sophisticated manner, and his rugged handsomeness ignited a youthful crush, creating an uncomfortable, unspoken tension within the royal household. Amanitore would seek him out in the gardens, offering him small gifts of fruit, her innocent gaze lingering on his face, oblivious to the dangerous undercurrents swirling around her. Meanwhile, within the court, factions formed. Some nobles, hardened by past conflicts with Rome, demanded total war, a complete annihilation of the invaders. Others, more pragmatic, saw the possibility of an unprecedented alliance, a merging of power that could benefit all. The queen found herself navigating a treacherous political landscape, torn between the desires of her people and the inexplicable pull of her captive. Far to the north, in Roman territory, Marcus Flavius, still recovering from his wounds, found himself increasingly disillusioned. Reports trickled in from official channels, speaking of the Nubian campaign as a failed mission, hinting that Rome planned to cut its losses. Marcus learned that no significant relief force was being prepared, that his beloved General Gaius Petronius was effectively being abandoned, left to his fate in the distant desert. The loyalty that had always burned so brightly for Rome began to flicker, replaced by a cold ember of resentment. Rome had betrayed their finest general, and a soldier like Marcus Flavius did not forget betrayal easily. As the political tension inside Meroë reached a fever pitch, Amanirenas realized that time was running out. She made a daring decision. She would share her deepest secret with Gaius, a testament to the trust that had slowly, painstakingly, grown between them. One twilight she led him to a hidden vault beneath the palace, a place of ancient power. There she revealed Cleopatra's legacy, not just maps and gold, but the seal of Isis, a sacred artifact, exquisitely carved from lapis lazuli and gold, that had legitimized rulers of the Nile for centuries. It bore intricate hieroglyphs, and among them, an ancient prophecy depicting an eagle and a lion intertwined. Before her death, Amanirenas whispered, her voice resonating with ancient power. "Cleopatra sent this to my mother. It was to be the foundation of a new confederation, an empire of all Nile peoples, stretching from Nubia to Arabia, united against Rome. She sent with it detailed plans, maps of secret trade routes, and promises of alliance from Ethiopian and Arabian kingdoms. This was her final gambit." Gaius, his mind reeling from the weight of such a revelation, knew he could not withhold his own truth any longer. His eyes met hers, filled with a desperate urgency. "My queen," he said, his voice low, laden with the gravity of his words, "what you propose, what Cleopatra dreamed, it will soon be tested. Rome plans a massive invasion, greater than any before. Aulus Gallus himself leads 12,000 men. They will be here within 4 months. His words struck her like a physical blow, stripping away the fragile hope of a peaceful alliance. Their strategic game, their intellectual duels, had ceased to be an abstract exercise. The threat was real, imminent, and overwhelming. Just as the revelation hung heavy in the air, a sudden violent sandstorm erupted outside the palace walls. The sky turned an ominous red, and the wind howled like a tortured beast, rattling the very foundations of the ancient building. They were forced to take refuge in the palace's inner sanctuary, a small, dimly lit chamber deep within its heart, where the stone walls muffled the storm's fury. Trapped together by the tempest, with the thunder of the wind outside mirroring the tumultuous emotions within, their forced proximity led to an even deeper vulnerability. Stripped of pretense, they spoke of their greatest fears, their deepest dreams. Gaius confessed his weariness of war, his longing for a life beyond conquest. Amanirenas spoke of her yearning for lasting peace for her people, a legacy beyond mere survival. The air thrummed with unspoken desires, with the desperate knowledge that their shared world was about to collide in a maelstrom of steel and blood. The storm raged, shaking the foundations of the ancient palace, but within the sanctuary a different kind of storm raged, one of raw emotion and desperate longing. His eyes found hers in the flickering lamplight, dark pools, reflecting a shared destiny. He reached for her, his hand gently cupping her cheek, his thumb tracing the soft curve of her jaw. Her breath hitched, and she leaned into his touch, her gaze locking with his, a silent plea, a silent surrender. Then his lips met hers. It was a kiss born of desperation, of unspoken longing, of the terrible knowledge that they were enemies, that their worlds were about to tear each other apart. It was passionate, desperate, forbidden, a silent scream against the inevitable. In that moment empires crumbled, duties dissolved, and only 2 souls remained, intertwined, forever changed. The night was a blur of raw emotion, of shared secrets, of an intellectual and emotional union that transcended the physical, solidifying a bond that had been forged in the fires of war and the quiet moments of shared understanding. They lay in each other's arms, the storm outside raging, knowing their love could destroy both their worlds, but utterly, helplessly unable to resist. 4 months had bled into the desert sands since the storm-ravaged night in Meroë. 4 months woven with a tapestry of whispered plans, desperate hope, and the chilling march of destiny. Along Egypt's southern frontier, the formidable legions of Aulus Gallus, 12,000 strong, massed like an impending storm, their bronze gleaming under the same sun that nurtured the burgeoning alliances of Nubia. From the verdant fields of Kush to the sun-baked plains of Ethiopia and the ancient ports of Arabia, allies gathered, answering Amanirenas' summons, a testament to her queenly power and the ancient bonds that united the peoples of the south. Every dawn brought fresh tension, every sunset a deeper shade of dread, for Meroë knew the hour of the eagle's full might was drawing near. It was during these fraught months that Marcus Flavius returned, not as a captive, but as a ghost. He arrived in Meroë, weary and gaunt, his uniform tattered, his eyes holding the haunted emptiness of a man who had seen the cold, unfeeling heart of his former allegiance. His loyalty, once as unyielding as Roman steel, had fractured under the weight of Rome's abandonment. He had witnessed firsthand the plans to sacrifice Gaius Petronius, deemed a lost cause, a failed general whose capture was to be erased, not avenged. He carried not only news of the impending invasion, but also the bitter truth of Rome's treachery, a truth that solidified his newfound purpose. He had come not to rescue a general, but to stand with the man who had shown him and his commander a different kind of honor. In the quiet hours after Marcus's revelation, in the deepest chambers of the palace where only the soft glow of oil lamps pierced the darkness, Gaius laid bare his audacious, desperate plan before Amanirenas. He proposed not merely an alliance, but a union, a political marriage that would forge a Romano-Nubian empire, an unprecedented power born from the ashes of conflict. His voice, usually firm with military command, now held a tremor of vulnerability as he painted a vision of combined Roman military discipline and Nubian wealth, of flourishing trade routes from the Red Sea to the distant Silk Road, of unprecedented prosperity that would flow from shared control of the ancient world's most coveted resources. Amanirenas listened, her heart thrumming with a mixture of terror and intoxicating hope. It was everything she had ever dreamed for her people: peace, prosperity, and respect on the world stage. The very thought, however, was as terrifying as it was tantalizing. The Roman Senate, steeped in centuries of unwavering pride, would never countenance such an union with a barbarian queen. Her own Nubian nobles, traditionalists to their core, might view such a marriage as a betrayal, leading to rebellion within her own court. And their children, should they be blessed with an heir, would live their lives as targets, symbols of a dangerous, revolutionary union, forever caught between two worlds. Yet there was the seal of Isis. She had shown it to him, the ancient, sacred artifact, and its power was undeniable. "This," she whispered, her fingers tracing the intricate carvings, "this would legitimize our union in the eyes of all Nile peoples. It is the key to their loyalty, to our children's claim." It was a bold move, a wager of love against the crushing weight of empire, and the stakes were higher than any they had ever faced. The political currents within Meroë swirled with increased turbulence. Kaliut, her cousin, her most trusted advisor, became the fiercest opponent of Gaius's continued presence. His voice, once a calm counsel, now thundered in the royal court, rallying traditionalist nobles with impassioned pleas. "The Queen," he cried, his eyes filled with genuine anguish, "is making decisions based on emotion, not strategy. This Roman, however charming, seeks only to manipulate her, to weaken our resolve from within." A painful flashback, sharper than a dagger's edge, pierced Amanirenas' mind. Kaliut, a young man, kneeling by his dying uncle's bedside, swearing an oath to protect the queen, to shield her from all harm. His fear was not ambition, but a desperate protective love, twisting his judgment. He genuinely believed Gaius was a venomous serpent, slowly poisoning the heart of his queen and the soul of Meroë. In a quiet corner of the palace, away from the heated debates, a more tender drama unfolded. Princess Amanirenas, no longer the merely infatuated girl, had matured with surprising grace. Her youthful crush on Gaius had, through weeks of observation, transformed into a profound respect for his character. She had seen his quiet dignity, his unwavering loyalty to Amanirenas, and the genuine love that blossomed between them. Her own heart, once solely fixed on the Roman general, had found its true compass in the quiet strength of a young Nubian diplomat, a man who saw her not just as a princess, but as a sharp, compassionate woman. Instead of betraying her mother, Amanirenas had chosen to support her, her understanding eyes now reflecting a newfound wisdom, a burgeoning capacity for the nuanced politics of love and alliances. And then Marcus Flavius, his face etched with the hardships of his journey, stood before Amanirenas and Gaius. His words were a stark, cold blade. Rome plans to abandon the mission. They deemed you, General, a liability, a forgotten casualty. He laid bare the emperor's cold calculation, the cynical abandonment of his own men. His voice, usually so controlled, broke with a raw, visceral emotion. My loyalty was always to Rome's ideals, to its strength, to my general. But Rome has betrayed its own. I choose loyalty to a man who still holds honor above all else. He was not merely informing them. He was declaring his allegiance. A cohort of Roman soldiers, equally disillusioned, stood ready to follow his lead. It was an unprecedented act, a betrayal of empire for a higher principle. With this grim news, the priestess Isis Amon, her ancient eyes gleaming with prophetic fire, sought Amanirenas. Her voice, like the rustle of papyrus leaves in the desert wind, carried the complete oracle, its full meaning now chillingly clear. When eagles learn to hunt with lions, the Nile will run golden for 1,000 years. But first, she whispered, her gaze sweeping over both Gaius and Amanirenas, both must sacrifice what they hold most dear. The prophecy, once a cryptic warning, now seemed a solemn demand. The very air thrummed with the impending conflict. Aelius Gallus, his face grim, his eyes hard, arrived with his 12,000 men, their disciplined ranks a stark contrast to the vast swirling desert. He sent an envoy to Amanirenas, his terms brutal, uncompromising. Surrender, Gaius, submit to Rome, or face total destruction. The deadline was set, 3 days. 3 days for Amanirenas to choose between her heart and her kingdom's survival. Gaius, his face pale but resolute, did not hesitate. I will return to them, he declared, his voice firm, ready to lay down his life. If my surrender saves Meroë, then it is a price I will gladly pay. He looked at Amanirenas, his gaze holding hers, a silent testament to the depth of his love. But Amanirenas, her eyes blazing with a fierce, protective love, refused. Her voice, though soft, carried the weight of a queen's unwavering will. No, I would rather die fighting, General Petronius, than live a single day without you, without the promise of what we could build together. The strategic reality was a harsh mistress. Even with her newly forged alliances, Nubia faced overwhelming odds against Rome's relentless might. But for her, the cost of living without him was far greater than any military defeat. The night before the final confrontation descended upon Meroë, heavy with the scent of fear and jasmine. In a secret chamber beneath the main temple, illuminated by the flickering light of ancient braziers, Gaius and Amanirenas stood before the priestess Isis Amon. This was no ordinary union. This was a desperate gamble, a solemn promise to forever intertwine their destinies. Amanirenas held the seal of Isis, its ancient power vibrating in her hand. As the priestess chanted blessings older than the pyramids themselves, Amanirenas pressed the sacred seal against Gaius's skin, leaving a faint, shimmering mark that pulsed with golden light. They exchanged vows not of Roman law or Nubian tradition, but of a bond forged in the crucible of war and impossible love. The wedding night was not a celebration, but a profound, almost sacred communion. They lay intertwined, their bodies a testament to a love that defied empires, their whispered confessions a symphony against the distant murmur of the gathering armies. There was no wild abandon, but a contained sensuality, a desperate tenderness that spoke of profound trust, and the terrifying knowledge that this might be their last embrace. Every touch was a promise, every shared breath a prayer, a desperate act of defiance against a world determined to tear them apart. It was a profound merging of souls, a quiet triumph in the face of impending doom. As dawn broke, painting the eastern sky in hues of blood and fire, they dressed not in wedding finery, but in the grim armor of war. Gaius donned a simplified Nubian leather and bronze cuirass, his gladius at his hip, while Amanirenas wore her hardened battle leathers, her quiver full, her bow ready. They stood together, two leaders, two lovers, ready to die together, if necessary, for a future only they could see. Just as Aulus Gallus's war horns shattered the morning stillness, a miracle. Marcus Flavius, his face grim but resolute, arrived leading a cohort of Roman soldiers. They were not many, perhaps 300, but their presence was seismic. These were men who, like Marcus, chose loyalty to a general who had shown them true honor, rather than to an empire that had betrayed its own. Their polished armor, catching the morning light, signaled an unexpected alliance, and then a final profound act of love. Calliute, witnessing Gaius's absolute devotion, his willingness to die for Meroë, his heart finally softened. He abandoned his opposition, his eyes reflecting a newfound respect, and offered his full support, rallying his traditionalist nobles to fight for the united cause. Aulus Gallus's assault on Meroë began with a thunderous roar. His 12,000 men advanced in perfectly coordinated attacks, their desert-adapted tactics designed to overwhelm. Catapults hurled massive stones, archers rained down volleys of arrows, and legionaries marched with terrifying precision. Amanirenas, mounted on her battle-scarred mare, led the defense from the walls, her voice a clarion call, inspiring fierce resistance from her Nubian warriors. Gaius, fighting alongside her, a Roman general defending a Nubian city, became a legend in the making. His gladiator skills, combined with the cunning tactics learned from Amanirenas, turned the tide in critical moments. He could have slipped away in the chaos, saved himself, but his choice to fight for Nubia was the ultimate proof of his transformation, the final, undeniable declaration of his loyalty. The battle raged for days, a brutal, unforgiving dance of death. Combined Romano-Nubian tactics, a blend of Roman discipline and Nubian desert mastery, proved surprisingly effective. They held the line, but at a terrible, heart-wrenching cost. The very soil of Meroë drank deep of the blood of its defenders, both Roman and Nubian. Many fell, brave men and women who believed in the impossible dream. Among the fallen was Teritechus, the stern but loyal commander of Amanirenas' archers, and Demetrius, the gentle Greek scribe, who died defending the palace library he so loved. Their sacrifices, sharp pains in the hearts of Gaius and Amanirenas, fueled their resolve. Finally, after days of relentless fighting, Aulus Gallus, recognizing the futility of conquering a united, unyielding kingdom, ordered a strategic withdrawal. The Roman legions, depleted but not broken, retreated north, leaving Meroë standing, defiant. The victory was costly, stained with blood and tears, but it was a victory, earned by the courage of two peoples united by an impossible love. Aulus Gallus, upon his return to Rome, presented his report to Augustus. His words, chosen with military precision, resonated with a chilling truth. Nubia, when united, is unconquerable. He recommended not further conquest, but an unprecedented alliance, a new way forward. And so, in a move that stunned the ancient world, Rome, the mighty empire, bowed its head, acknowledging a power born of unity. In a grand ceremony that blended Roman and Nubian rites, Gaius and Amanirenas were crowned co-rulers of the First Romano-African Alliance, their hands clasped over the seal of Isis. It was a political revolution, a beacon of hope for other kingdoms chafing under Rome's heavy hand. Their success, born from love and sacrifice, inspired countless others to seek alliance rather than submit, to dream of freedom rather than conquest. And then, amid the quiet joy of shared triumph, Amanirenas, her eyes shining with unshed tears, whispered a secret that would forever bind their two worlds. "My love," she murmured, her hand gently touching her belly, "we are to have a child." The prophecy, the priestess's words, echoed in their hearts. The Nile trade routes, now open and safe, did indeed run golden with unprecedented prosperity. But the deepest golden current flowed from the promise of a future, a legacy born of an impossible love, forever woven into the fabric of two empires. 5 years later, the thriving empire of Meroë stood as a testament to their love. Trade routes flourished, Roman engineering combined with African innovation, creating wonders. Twin children, Marcus Amani, with his father's Roman eyes and his mother's Nubian grace, and Julia Candace, a fierce, beautiful princess of two worlds, played in the palace gardens where East met West, where love conquered hate, and where two hearts created an empire that proved diversity was indeed strength. The soft, golden light of the Meroitic sunset painted the palace gardens in hues of contentment, a familiar and cherished sight for General Gaius Petronius. 5 years had spun themselves into the tapestry of time since the roar of battle had shaken the very foundations of Meroë. 5 years since his heart, once bound by Roman discipline, had found its true freedom in the fierce, unwavering love of a Nubian queen. He stood by Amanirenas, their hands clasped, their fingers intertwined, the simple gesture speaking volumes of a bond forged in fire and deepened by the quiet rhythms of shared life. They were in their late 40s now, both bearing the graceful marks of time, etched by leadership and love. Gaius's hair had silvered further at the temples, but his eyes, once sharp with the cold precision of a strategist, now held a warmth, a tenderness that softened their steel-grey depths. Amanirenas, ever regal, carried herself with an even greater majesty, her bronze skin glowing, her dark eyes reflecting not just the wisdom of a queen, but the profound joy of a woman fulfilled. Their love, born amidst the chaos of war and the clash of empires, had not merely resisted the passage of time, it had blossomed, deep and unshakable, an anchor in the vast, shifting currents of their extraordinary lives. It was in the quiet glances across a crowded council chamber, the shared laughter over a bedtime story, the comforting presence in the still hours of the night. Their bond was a living testament to the truth that love, true love, knows no boundaries of race, culture, or circumstance. Their greatest treasures, their undeniable legacy, were the children who now chased each other through the palace gardens, their joyous peals of laughter echoing through the ancient stones. Marcus Amani, their eldest, now a spirited boy of 5, possessed his father's keen, intelligent eyes, a startling shade of blue-grey set in a face that carried his mother's noble Nubian features. He was a whirlwind of energy, already displaying a fascination for both Roman military formations and the intricate patterns of Nubian architecture. His twin sister, Julia Candace, was a vision of graceful determination, her movements fluid and purposeful like her mother's, her dark eyes holding a mischievous glint that was all her own. They were the living embodiment of the cultural fusion their parents had dared to dream, a promise of a future where East and West met not in conflict, but in harmonious creation. The empire they had forged, the Romano-Nubian alliance, had indeed thrived beyond all wildest expectations. The Nile, once a contested border, now flowed as the central artery of an unprecedented golden age. Trade routes, once plagued by conflict, hummed with activity. Roman engineering, with its roads and aqueducts, had transformed Nubian infrastructure, bringing fresh water to arid lands and connecting distant villages. In return, Nubian advancements in metallurgy and agriculture had revolutionized Roman production methods. Meroë had become a bustling hub of innovation, a crossroads of ideas where Roman concrete mixed with Nubian gold, where Latin philosophical treatises were debated alongside ancient Egyptian wisdom, where the world truly converged. The Nile running golden was no longer just a prophecy, it was a vibrant, tangible reality built on mutual respect and shared endeavor. This daring experiment in cultural unity had not gone unnoticed. Whispers of the lioness of Meroë and the Roman who became a king had spread across the ancient world. Their story became a legend, inspiring other interracial royal marriages, alliances that transcended long-held hostilities. Kingdoms that had once viewed each other with suspicion now sought cooperation, seeing in Meroë a blueprint for a more peaceful and prosperous future. It was a silent revolution, not of swords, but of hearts and minds, proving that unity could be Rome's most formidable challenge and its greatest teacher. The closest companions of Gaius and Amanirenas, the ones who had witnessed their improbable journey, had also found their rightful places in this new world. Marcus Flavius, the loyal centurion who had defied Rome for his general, now commanded the allied army with honor and distinction. His scarred face, once etched with a soldier's grim duty, often broke into a rare, genuine smile, especially when observing the playful antics of the royal twins. He found a profound purpose in safeguarding this new, fragile peace, a purpose far richer than any glory Rome could have offered. His unwavering loyalty had been justly rewarded, not with power, but with meaning. Caliut, Amanirenas' cousin, once a fervent opponent of Gaius, now served as chief advisor to the co-rulers. His protective nature, once channeled into opposition, had transformed into an unshakable support for the new dynasty. He had witnessed the depth of Gaius's love for Amanirenas, his willingness to sacrifice everything for Meroë, and the unquestionable strength their union brought. His fierce intelligence and dedication were now channeled into securing the alliance, ensuring its stability and prosperity. He had found his honor not in guarding tradition, but in championing a bold, unexpected future. Princess Amanirenas, once a shy, curious girl consumed by a fleeting crush, had blossomed into a wise and formidable diplomat. Her gentle demeanor belied a sharp mind and a compassionate heart. She had found her own love story, not with a Roman general, but with a brilliant young Nubian scholar and courtier, a man whose quiet strength mirrored her own. Together, they traveled to distant lands, fostering new alliances, their marriage a testament to the power of understanding and connection between diverse cultures. The priestess Isis Amon, her eyes ever ancient and knowing, remained a constant presence, serving as the spiritual advisor to the new empire. She watched over the royal family, her prophetic whispers guiding their steps, ensuring that the sacred traditions of Meroë continued to thrive amidst the new blend of cultures. The prophecy she had uttered, "When eagles learn to hunt with lions, the Nile will run golden for 1,000 years, but first both must sacrifice what they hold most dear," had been fulfilled, a testament to the power of destiny and the courage of two souls. Yet even in this golden age, the echoes of sacrifice lingered, a poignant reminder of the price of their triumph. The fallen, both Roman and Nubian, lay beneath the desert sands, their lives the ultimate cost of the peace that now reigned. Gaius carried the silent burden of those he had led into battle, both for Rome and for Meroë, a weight that never fully lifted but was softened by the shared purpose he now embraced. Amanirenas, too, felt the deep ache of those lost defending her kingdom, friends and kin whose absence was a constant bittersweet reminder. Their triumph was built on the foundation of tears and blood, a testament to the sacrifices made on both sides. But in their eyes, as they watched Marcus Amani and Julia Candace chase each other, their laughter ringing freely, it was a price worth paying. For in their children's joyous faces, in the thriving city, in the blossoming alliances, they saw not just the end of a conflict, but the birth of a new world. Gaius's gaze met Amanirenas's, a silent communion passing between them that spoke of triumphs and sorrows, of dreams realized and sacrifices made. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers once more. He had set out to conquer an empire, but in doing so he had found his own, not of Roman might, but of the heart. "My queen," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Look what we have built. Look at the future." Amanirenas smiled, her heart overflowing. "Not merely built, my love," she replied, her voice soft as the desert breeze, "but brought into being from a love that changed the world." And their eyes, now filled with the gentle wisdom of years, rested on their children, the living, breathing promise that indeed love, boundless and fierce, could conquer all, even the greatest divides of empire and destiny. And in that quiet, sacred moment, under the vast, unchanging sky, the whispers of history seem to affirm, true power lies not in conquest, but in connection. And so, this sweeping saga, born from the clash of empires and the unexpected blossoming of love, draws to a close. The tale of General Gaius Petronius and Queen Amanirenas reminds us that even in the face of insurmountable odds, and against the crushing weight of prejudice and tradition, the human heart holds an astonishing capacity for change, for understanding, and for forging a future brighter than any past. Their story is a powerful testament to the courage it takes, not just to fight for what you believe in, but to build bridges where walls once stood. It speaks of the profound beauty of embracing difference, of finding strength in unity, and of the transformative power of a love so profound it can literally change the course of history. Every choice they made, every sacrifice they offered, illuminated a path towards a world where honor is measured not by conquest, but by connection. What an extraordinary journey we have shared, haven't we? Now, we turn to you, our cherished audience. What moment in Gaius and Amanirenas' epic love story resonated most deeply with your soul? Comment your favorite moment below. We are so eager to hear from you. And tell us, if you had stood in Queen Amanirenas' place, facing such an impossible choice between love and loyalty, what would you have done? Share your thoughts, your emotions, and let's ignite a wonderful discussion. If this tale of passion, courage, and destiny captivated your heart, please spread the word. Tag someone who loves epic love stories and let them discover this unforgettable journey. And as a special thank you to those who journeyed with us until the very end, type Destiny in the comments. It truly helps our channel reach more history and romance enthusiasts like you. If this tale captivated your heart, be sure to explore our other narratives linked in the cards above, where more extraordinary characters and unforgettable romances await. Until next time, may your own stories be filled with courage, love, and endless possibility.